Ford Canada celebrated the start of production on a new vehicle today. The 2015 Ford Edge will be built in Oakville, Ontario, and shipped around the world. Ford's Oakville plant has been modernized with a $71.5 million investment from the federal government and a similar amount from the province of Ontario. Ford put up $700 million for the redesign. Ford Canada CEO Dianne Craig was at the announcement today. She said the investment signals positive news about the Canadian industry.
This investment in Oakville is a really important message, and it sends the message, the Canadian manufacturing, we can compete and we can win in the global economy.
I sat down recently with Dianne Craig. We talked about how the North American auto industry came back from the depths of the financial crisis.
2008 was a perfect storm for the North American auto industry. Consumer credit froze, gas prices spiked, and consumers stopped buying SUVs with poor fuel efficiency. The U.S. government ended up bailing out GM and Chrysler, with Canada joining in.
But these are not ordinary circumstances.
Ford avoided a government bailout, having raised billions in private financing in 2006. These days, things are looking up for all of Detroit's big three. When I spoke with Ford Canada CEO Dianne Craig, we started with the lessons Ford learned from the crisis.
You look at what happened with Ford, and I've learned so much about just having a focus on our One Ford plan, and having a consistency of purpose and working that plan and coming together, working together as a team. And the product, right, is the lifeblood of our business. And even when the business was challenged, we were losing billions of dollars. We were investing billions of dollars in our product, and of course that continues through today in 2015. I mean, it's almost been a decade of a lot of change, and so we're in a great place. But it's something that we never take for granted because of where we were.
There's a time when it seemed as though the North American automakers were on the decline. Mm-hmm. Was it innovation that managed to turn that around? Because there's kind of a new sense of health and vibrancy for all of you right now.
No question about it, and that I think we should all be proud of that. I mean, Detroit, as we know it, the big three have come through a challenging time, and at Ford it has been about innovation. I mean, that is what really drives our business, and it's all about challenging tradition and taking smart risks. And there's so much emerging technologies that are coming out, and then the customer and what the customer expectations are changing. So these are all things that we have to be mindful of. We've got to innovate faster than the competition. We got to stay ahead of the competition, and then give the customers what they want and value that they might not even know and appreciate today.
You have innovated a calculated gamble, but a fairly big and expensive gamble on the new F-150, including, of course, having a sales adjustment as people wait for that new truck. Is it going to pay off?
We absolutely think it's going to pay off, and it is a big bet, right? But again, it comes back to taking some really smart, calculated risks. And if there's one place that I always say we've got a lot of street cred in, is its full-size pickup. We've been the best-selling pickup for 49 years in Canada, the best-selling vehicle in Canada for the last 5 years. So we're looking to certainly secure 50 years of leadership this year. The truck's off to an incredible start. It's staying on dealer lots less than 9 days. So we knew it was a big bet, but we are really confident we made the right decision. In the end, the consumer is going to 700 pounds lighter. The way it drives is incredible, and of course fuel efficiency is one of the top purchase considerations.
One of the kind of concerns for Ford was that this big investment was around rising gas prices, and of course nobody really predicted what was going to happen to the price of oil. Gas prices are way down. Does that affect the way consumers think about this lighter truck?
Well, not really, because what's exciting especially for us, and what we've seen happen in Canada, especially even last year we saw it, and we're seeing it into this year. The full-size pickup segment is almost 20% of the industry in Canada. That's actually going up. Of course, that's going to happen with gas prices as well in some instances. Although we find Canadians are very practical. They're smart enough to know that gas prices are going to come up, right, just as fast as they can come down. So, and fuel efficiency is going to be really important, whether or not the leader is where it is at today or where it might be 6 months from now.
Today, we are pleased to announce that the Ford GT will be built right here in Markham, Ontario.
You had a good news announcement to make at the Canadian Auto Show. Did that feel good to be able to say, here's this new car and here's what it means for Canada?
Yes, it was a great week. at the press day at Toronto. First, we won the AJAC Award, being Truck of the Year, which is a big, big nod. And we're really excited. It's the automotive journalists that vote on the vehicles, and so that was just terrific. To win that award, it was super for F-150. But we were really excited about the announcement of the Ford GT, which was debuted at the North American International Auto Show. But we had the vehicle in Toronto, and of course, we announced, the big announcement was that it was being built right here, outside of Toronto at Markham. So that made it extra special for us.
A new car being produced here in Canada. That's increasingly rare these days as more and more manufacturing moves to competitive jurisdictions like Mexico, where labor costs are lower. I asked Dianne Craig about Ford's commitment to Canada.
Well, I'd say, first of all, we're really excited about the investment that we made the announcement in Oakville, which was just a couple years ago. We're going to have our, what we call Job 1 next week with the new Edge, which is dynamite. It's a global vehicle. It was a big deal for Canada when we made that announcement because it was the first time in some time that there was a big manufacturing investment. So we've proven, based on Oakville, we can be competitive in Canada from a manufacturing standpoint. However, having said that, manufacturing footprint is shrinking in Canada. And we have to be mindful of that. We have to understand the competition we're up against, and we've got stiff competition for manufacturing investments just south of the border. And so the good news is we've got a great working relationship with Unifor. We got great working relationships with our government partners, but it has to be a business equation that works for everyone. So we got to continue, and as certainly the leader for Ford of Canada, I'm going to advocate for manufacturing investments, but we have to be mindful about the competition we're up against.
And that competition, as you say, does come in the form of government support. Mm-hmm. Increasingly, Mexico is the place that Canada is losing manufacturing to, it seems, not just this industry, but in others.
Right.
The government there, very, very supportive of
yes.
drawing that manufacturing. What is the role? Because taxpayers can be sometimes less pleased when they see governments investing in order to keep jobs, and yet that does seem to be what happens.
And I would understand that from a taxpayer point of view, because again, this is where the business decision comes from, even for the government partners that we have, because it has to make sense. But when you look at the economic spin-off of these jobs, you just look at Oakville. The initial plan was 2,800 people. We have over 4,000 people now working in Oakville, and that's just over the last couple of years. And you add the supplier effect to that, so there is a real driver to economic opportunity, obviously, because of these investments. So you have to measure the business equation, but it's an investment. It's an investment, and it needs to be looked at as an industrial investment and not necessarily just some kind of a bailout, because it's very, very different. And my concern, I think, for our industry is, once you invest like we did in Oakville, you've basically secured that investment for years to come, right? Once you lose it, it's gone. And that's the challenge that I think we got to be really mindful of in Canada.
Unfortunately, in some industries, the Canadian productivity or efficiency of manufacturing doesn't keep pace with Mexico, with parts of the U.S. I know that in some places that's not true in the auto industry, that some of the plants mm-hmm. here are as productive as any.
Absolutely.
Is there a secret formula to that? How do you make a plant as productive as it could possibly be?
Well, I think we are so proud of the workers that we have in our plants. I mean, the proud men and women that put together our, whether it's our engines or our vehicles, I mean, they are as competitive as any jurisdiction around the globe. So it does not come down to whether or not the workforce is competitive, whether or not they're skilled enough. So it's certainly an attribute we have that I think helps. But with any of these investments, there's so many ingredients that go into it that matter. Whether it's obviously the labor cost is important, given what's happening with government incentives, in other parts of the world, that matters, right? The location, the supply base. I mean, it's just a lot of things need to come into play to make it be the optimal place where you're going to invest. And for me, I'm competing with my global colleagues to make sure the investment lands here in Canada.
One of the big factors for your business and your company is currency. Mm-hmm. And of course, we've all seen the number that one of your biggest competitors, Toyota, gets a $10 billion currency advantage because of its currency. Mm-hmm. How does the Canadian dollar shake out? Because I imagine that a lot of your costs are still priced in U.S. dollars, some of your mm-hmm. inputs still U.S. dollars, and yet your labor costs on a relative basis might look better. How does it affect your operations?
Well, I think there's a few things to be mindful of. First of all, it gets back to manufacturing competitiveness, right? Free trade agreements really matter. They also become a part of the equation that I didn't even mention, right? Because they're going to certainly either help or hurt. We were really excited about the CETA deal, right? Because we are going to ship out of Oakville to Europe. So that'll be a really good thing. And it certainly makes it's certainly part of the decision-making process about what free trade agreements are in place. But within that, the currency piece of it is so critical, because you can have free trade agreements and have currency manipulators happening, and it doesn't really matter what the free trade agreement says. So we are really being very, very active at Ford with the governments here in Canada as well as south of the border to talk about making sure when we have these free trade agreements that there's currency discipline to make sure the currency isn't getting manipulated. And it is a challenge for us. Right now it's absolutely a challenge for us. But we have to look whether it's investments or how we run our business. We've been around for 100 years, so we've got to just, manage for the long term and not the short term. Not to say it doesn't present challenges, good and bad, because, obviously it helps from an export standpoint, but we sell vehicles here, which also has an impact too. So we have to manage both.
Ford Motors is a global company with 187,000 employees worldwide. That includes about 7,000 here in Canada and 18,000 more at Canadian dealerships. Among Canadians, Ford is a brand with enduring popularity.
Ford led Canadian auto sales in 2014. More than 291,000 new Ford vehicles were driven off dealership lots, up almost 3% year over year. It was Ford Canada's best sales year since 1997. Dianne Craig has been CEO of Ford Canada since November 2011. When we talked, I asked her about her own path to the top job.
I don't even know where to start, because when I graduated from university, I didn't have an eye to go work for the car business. My dad actually worked at Ford, but it had nothing to do with the fact I ended up working at Ford. And Ford was hiring. I needed a job. I actually have a degree in mathematics, so I ended up in marketing and sales, which is not necessarily conducive for a math background. And in a traditional marketing, sales, and service career at Ford, you start out calling on dealerships. You wholesale them the vehicles, you wholesale them the parts. And so I've learned so much about this business from our retailers, right? And so I had a very traditional career at Ford, calling on dealers for my first 4 to 5 years, learning the business, and then I've had a lot of core marketing and sales jobs throughout my time at Ford. And before I came to Canada, I ran the southeastern part of the United States and ran a business down there. And then I had this incredible opportunity to come up here and run the Ford business, which has been just tremendous. Great people, great retailers, healthy business, and a wonderful place to live.
Would you describe the culture of Ford Canada as different than the culture of the parent company?
I think it's very much the same. I mean, it's a family business. Today, it's still been a family business. Our values and beliefs are so strong, whether it's giving back to the community, taking care of each other, looking after our retailers and working with them as our business partners. It's very much the same. I think I have the benefit of it's a smaller organization relative to the U.S., which gives us the opportunity to be very nimble when we need to, and and understand everything you need to know about Canada.
You had to manage through some tough stuff and continue to face the recall issue, which is one that the auto industry faces in a way today that I think would have been unimaginable a decade ago. How do you manage through things like that, where it affects not just how you're perceived outside the company, but also by your employees?
Sure. Well, quality is the price of entry for any one of the manufacturers, and certainly there's been more recalls than there has been in the past. Ford actually had the lowest amount of recalls last year than any of the players in North America. But having said that, we haven't changed our process. I mean, if we see something that is wrong, we fix it right away. We look to find the fix. So, and it's just part of our business, and we got to recognize when we have an issue, and we got to fix it quick.
When we talk about the kind of innovation that led you to update the F-150, how big a component is that inside the company? This need to continue to be creative and push the boundaries of what a car can do and what it will be.
It's such a big part right now of the way we operate, especially when you go through such a tough time. And there's a lot of institutional knowledge about making sure you never go through, having 60,000 people leave the company and, shuttering, I think it was 27 assembly plants, which was really, really tough. But then, and everybody says, you weathered through it so beautifully, where do you go from here? And so much of our DNA has always been about innovation, but it's how do you take it to the next level? And Amanda, what's surprising me, even in my long time at Ford, is the pace of change is just incredible. The technology we have in these vehicles, and now everybody's talking about autonomous vehicles, right? And we want to be on the leading edge of all these innovations. And like I said, the F-150 was a great example of what we do really well. Even our Sync system with voice-activated commands. We were the first to come out with that in the industry. And we stubbed our toe a little bit because we were the first out. We had some challenges with the technology, but we're way ahead of the curve compared to our competitors. So it's about taking those calculated risks, right? Challenging tradition.
Ford isn't the only automaker challenging tradition. Fully electric vehicles are on the verge of becoming mainstream. Most automakers have their own electric offerings, not to mention Tesla, which focuses exclusively on the electric market. I asked Dianne Craig if she thinks automakers are genuinely committed to an electric future.
Well, I definitely think the commitment's there. I mean, it's been a core part of our strategy to make sure that consumers had a power of choice, whether it's electric vehicles, we have EcoBoost engines, right, hybrid vehicles, plug-in hybrids. But the reality is we're still not seeing a lot of consumers adapt any of those technologies. I mean, last year our electric vehicles were up 17%. So we're seeing it go up, but the numbers are still really small as a percent of the industry. And especially now that you have gas prices being where they are, I think if we're really going to see an impact down the road, it certainly will be driven by what happens with the price of gas. But consumers ultimately have to want to adopt technology. They're still worried about range, right? And we haven't really seen that change. So I think at Ford we're placing a number of bets just because we want to make sure where the industry goes, we're prepared to address it. And I think we're going to have to see what happens. But I think we all want to see that technology move more so and have consumers adopt it more than they have, and we're not there yet.
Where do you put, in kind of your kind of mental landscape, a competitor like a Tesla in terms of stuff you need to worry about or keep an eye on?
Well, I think any competitor we have to pay attention to, and I think Tesla's pushing the boundaries, especially not so much in the technology space as much as how they go to market with consumers, because they've got a different setup. They don't have a traditional franchise network. What they're doing with their customers in terms of concierge service, and it's different. And I think that's a space we have to watch, especially for Lincoln, our luxury brand, about what is that consumer going to want in the future. So I think it's been more, for me, I've been more intrigued to see how they're going to market as much as I am their technology.
What's kind of top of your list of things you have as goals for yourself, for the company?
I'd say that at the top of our list is we have great product, we have great retailers, but we have to differentiate ourselves when it comes down to the consumer experience. Because that, to me, is what really is going to make the difference in terms of, we're proud to be the market leader for the last 5 years, but we have this vision to be the most trusted, admired automotive brand in Canada. We want people to love our brand. We want people to advocate for us. That means we got to do everything right. Product's got to be perfect. The sales and service experience has to be perfect. And we have 430 dealers across Canada, and they've got 18,000 employees, right? And we've got a lot of employees working at Ford of Canada, and we got to all come together, and we got to get it right better than everybody else all the time, so our customers love us. So that's really our number one priority at Ford, is how we really differentiate ourselves, because in the end, everybody's got great product. As much as I'm biased, I think we got great product. We really need to get the consumer experience to a place that's exceptional.
All right, we got to leave it there. We appreciate your time.
Great, thank you.